What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the stream, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit differently. I'm going to be breaking down the FanDuel main slate games of college football for this weekend. Just something I thought I'd try out. I've already done all the research for myself, so I thought I'd just share it and see what everybody thought. So what I'm going to do is probably break down each game for about a minute or so, give or take, and then I'll give you some of my top picks at the end. And if you want to check out my Twitter, I usually post my top 2 or 3 lineups for the day. If you all want to check that out as well, it's going to be at ViderLion10. Let's go. So Kansas State at Texas, first game on the slate here. Texas 3.5 point favorites. 49.5 game total doesn't get me too excited. Personally, I think the top play for this game for me is going to be Jonathan Brooks at $10,000. I was not impressed with Malik Murphy last week. I did have a couple of lineups with him in it. And they might have been holding him back, but BYU was not a very good passing defense, and they didn't really exploit anything. He looked a little shaky in there. It's quite possible Malik Murphy at $7,000 could pop off, and they let him sling it. He does have a very big arm, but I'm going to be expecting them to lean on the running game. Kansas State's run defense is decent, but it's not like outstanding. Jonathan Brooks is a straight workhorse, just like every Texas back that's come before him. I got him projected at 23 points right now. He does have a ceiling of about 32, so I give him a value of about 2.6, which is one of the higher running backs on the slate. Just going to have to pay up to get him. In terms of the passing game, like I talked about Malik Murphy there, I do like Xavier Worthy a little bit at $7,600. A little bit underpriced for what his talent is, but it's going to really come down to what Texas can do in the passing game. Again, I think they're going to lean more in the running game, but I do have Worthy projected for 13 points. He does have a ceiling of 22 if he can kind of get going. He's probably going to need 2 touchdowns likely to reach that number, but he does have a value of 2.10 for me. So not a bad pick at $7,600, but I like a lot of guys other than him. Don't really like anybody on the Kansas State side of things. They split the running back touches too much, and I'm not a fan of Will Howard, specifically against this Texas defense. Moving on, we got Notre Dame at Clemson. Clemson is a 3-point underdog at home. This game, again, not getting me very excited with a 44.5 game total. We do have a big injury to look out for in this game. That's Will Shipley. He's dealing with a concussion right now. He did avoid a neck injury, according to Dabo Sweeney. So, with Will Shipley being out, if you can get some of that information early on, Phil Maffa becomes a decent play for like 15 to 20 touches at $5,700. And any running back that gets that amount of touches at $5,700 has to be in play. Now, Notre Dame's run defense and defense as a whole is pretty good. But still, if he is getting all those touches, I project him for about 10 points. I don't think he has a great ceiling, probably capping out around 16, but it gives him a value of 2.1, which is pretty decent and a nice salary saver when we have some really high-end players on this slate that you're going to have to pay up for. Another guy from Clemson I like just because of his cost is Jake Brittingstool. He's really been stacking up the targets lately, becoming Cade Klubnik's favorite target. He's sitting there at $5,800. He got projected 8 points with a ceiling of 16 and a value of 1.83. Again, a nice little punt play, salary saver option for there. Don't really like anybody on the Notre Dame side. They like to run the ball. Audric Estime is, I think, $9,300. It's a little too pricey for me, and there's other running backs that I just think are better on this slate. Texas A&M at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a 3-point favorite in a 51.5 point game total. I'm not going to be on Jackson Dart and Quinshon Judkins in this slate. Those are really 2 options I trust on a week-to-week basis for Ole Miss. And Texas A&M's got a decent enough defense to hold them down. I don't like Dart's cost at $10,500 with a lot of the other quarterbacks that are up in that range as well. And same with Quinshon Judkins. He's a similar kind of deal of what Audric Estime. He's definitely got the talent, but the matchup isn't the greatest, and there's a lot of running backs for a lot better of costs. On the Texas A&M side, I think Ole Miss can be gotten in the passing department a little bit. I'm not going to target Max Johnson. I don't think he's that good. He doesn't have that much upside. I do like Evan Stewart and Aniyah Smith, though, at $7,500 and $7,200 respectively. I have them both projected for 11 points, about 2021 for a ceiling each. So they're pretty equal value. Personally, I might lean Aniyah Smith. Ole Miss can get hit big in the passing game, and Aniyah Smith is really that guy who can hit the downfield passing. Evan Stewart likes to work a little bit more in those short area targets, so I would target Aniyah Smith from this game. Not anybody I love too much, though. We do have Arkansas and Florida. Florida 3-point favorites and a 49.5. Not a great game total, but I think this is a game that could definitely go crazy. You saw what happened with the South Carolina and Florida game a couple weeks ago. Spencer Rattler went off. They said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, and that's me picking KJ Jefferson every single time he shows up on a slate. I can't get past what he has as an upside. I told myself after the last game, which was just so bad against Mississippi State, that I was never picking him again. And here I am doing it again. So Arkansas's coming off of a bye. Byes always help. But more specifically, they fired their offensive coordinator. And they've trimmed down their playbook. They're going to run the stuff that they run well. So here I am believing in KJ Jefferson again. We saw what he could do last year. He popped off in a number of games last year. Definitely has rushing upside. So I got to project it for 20 points, which is at his $8,400 price tag is already solid enough, and a ceiling of 32, so near 4x value, giving him a solid value of a 2.85. I'm going to take a couple shots at him. I'm not going to predominantly target him, but I'm definitely going to take some shots with him. I'm also going to try to stack him with Andrew Armstrong. He's a clear stacking partner, top target, big guy. They start to use him down the field a little bit more, get some max protection. Maybe hit like 1 or 2 deep shots. This could be a really good game for Andrew Armstrong and KJ Jefferson. And Florida can definitely be gotten in the passing attack. They're 79th in EPA per play against for dropback. So I like that. For Arkansas, we also got an injury to watch in Raheem Sanders. He did miss the last game, and he's been injured all year. Hasn't been quite right, but he's had a couple weeks off now. He's practicing again. He did rehab in Texas. At $5,500, if Raheem Sanders plays, I'm going to have a couple shots at him because of that, savings option. Personally, if he plays and Phil Maffa is going to get the targets or is going to play because of Will Shipley injury, I'm probably targeting Raheem Sanders instead because, Raheem Sanders was talked about as a high second-round draft pick when the season started. So the talent is there. It's just about health and offensive line and offensive play in general. So I think it's a good spot for him if he is fully healthy. I got to project it for 8 points conservatively, ceiling of 20 for a value of 2.17. If he doesn't play Rashad Dubinin, I'm okay on it, $6,300, but not somebody I'm predominantly targeting. On the Florida side of things, I'm really focusing on wide receivers. Ricky Pearsall and Eugene Wilson III. Eugene Wilson III had a big game against Georgia last week. The 4-star freshman is seemingly starting to break out. He's had targets since coming back from injury of 10, 9, and 12 the last 3 games, compared to Pearsall, who had 5, 13, and 9. So he's really getting the same target share. Pearsall gives you a little bit more downfield threat action, big plays. So you can justify his cost at $8,300 a little bit more. Personally, I'm leaning a little bit more towards Wilson at the $6,400 mark because of the equal target share that's going on. And Arkansas can definitely be had in the secondary. So those are my targets for the day. I got Pearsall at a value of 2 and Wilson III at a value of 2.13. So pretty even. If you can afford Pearsall, not a bad option for sure. Next game is going to be a fun one. We got Oklahoma at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State 6-point home dog against Oklahoma coming off of a loss. Game total of 61.5. Dylan Gabriel, one of the top plays on the slate for sure, sitting at $11,600. I got a projected 31 points, ceiling of 40 and a value of 2.93. Again, plenty of dual threat upside. Oklahoma State's passing defense is not good at all. And I think Oklahoma's going to try to throw the ball this week. They did not throw the ball a bunch last week. They tried to rely on the running game against Kansas. I don't know why Kansas can get destroyed through the air. So that was a weird decision. Might have cost them the game. So because of that, I'm going to lean back on Nick Anderson. I got burnt last week on it. But I think Nick Anderson might get some downfield targets in this game. At $7,800, I got it projected at a 12 points for the game with a ceiling of 22. Can probably even go a little bit higher than that because the guy's a touchdown machine. Can get 2 or 3 touchdowns. He can break the slate for sure. An overall value of 1.96 on him. Other receivers to mention, Drake Stoops, also decent, but he's the same price as Nick Anderson. He doesn't get a lot of downfield targets. You're going to be hoping for 1 or 2 touchdowns out of him for really him to be a big ceiling kind of guy. I don't think he has the ceiling. Jaleel Farouk's a guy I like to keep going back to, but he just got arrested. He's going to play is what the term is, but I don't know if I trust that, so I'm going to avoid him at the $6,400 because I don't want to get burnt with a guy who doesn't end up playing. On the Oklahoma State side of things, Ollie Gordon has just been going stupid the last 3 games. 43.4, 52.2, and 41.2 in his last 3 games. I faded him last week because I'm like, he's got a tough matchup. Nah, I can't do it. And this guy's just going crazy. Now, his price tag this week is $11,000. He is up there, but I think he might be worth it if you can find the right builds. The difficulty is, and I've gone through building some of my lineups, I haven't been able to find a way to get him in my lineup consistently enough. I do have him projected for 25 points because I think he's going to get 25 plus touches, and Oklahoma's run defense can definitely get got. He does it. I put him down at a ceiling of 36, but he definitely has a ceiling a lot higher than that. And he has an overall value for me for 2.6, and a guy who puts up that many points, if you can find the right value options, I would look at Ollie Gordon to pay up for him. Speaking of value options, I think Oklahoma State is a nice wide receiving option there. Brennan Presley is $6,700. Total opportunities, that's going to be both rushing and targets because he's been getting some rushing opportunities the last few games as well. 14, 10, and 9 his last 3 games. I got him projected at 10 points with a ceiling of 18 and a value of 1.89. Seems to be the top target since, I forget his name, but one of their top receiving targets went down a few games ago. He's seemingly stepped up into that role in a game that's going to have a lot of points scored. So I like him at $6,700. Personally, I'm not targeting any of the Oklahoma running backs. I can never seem to figure out that running back position. And yeah, they got multiple guys on the injury report. This is a later start game. Tawee Walker was taking over the job, but then he got hurt. Marcus Majors got hurt. Javonte Barnes is back from injury. And then Gavin Sawchuk. It's a mess trying to figure out that backfield. I don't feel comfortable trusting anybody, even though Oklahoma State's defense can definitely get got. And then Alan Bowman is a guy at $7,600 is going to be appealing with this game score. Personally, I don't love guys at quarterback position who don't have rushing upside. Bowman would have to throw for a ton of yards and quite a few touchdowns for me to be really happy with him, so I'm going to try to avoid him. But he definitely does make sense in some game stacks. Moving on to Florida State at Pittsburgh. Florida State 21.5-point favorites. Game score of 50.5. Jordan Travis is obvious here. I faded him last week because, I thought the whole offense as a whole would, cook, and they did. But Travis was definitely a part of that. He did hit Trey Benson for a long touchdown as well, so that allowed Trey Benson to also hit value. I think we saw probably what his ceiling was in blowouts. Yeah, in the last game at about 35.2. So I have him projected for 30 with a ceiling of 37 for a value of 2.88. There's other guys I like on the slate, but I definitely do not mind taking shots at Jordan Travis. His top target for me is going to be Keon Coleman. Even if Johnny Wilson plays, I still like Keon Coleman. If Johnny Wilson doesn't play, which I don't think he will, Keon Coleman becomes a slam play. I just haven't been able to find a way to get him in my lineups because of some of the other guys I'm interested in, but definitely like Keon Coleman, regardless if Johnny Wilson plays, even more so if he doesn't. Trey Benson, explosiveness all around. The problem is he going to get enough touches? If he can get 15 touches, he can definitely make do on his $8,800 cost. I just don't know if he's going to get that. I mean, then again, he did hit Virginia Tech for 10 carries and 200 yards and 2 touchdowns a few games ago, so it's a little bit of a risk, and there's some other options in that price range that I like a little bit more, but Trey Benson definitely in play. Don't want anybody from Pittsburgh. Just don't. The bad offense, good defense, whatever. Virginia Tech at Louisville. Louisville is a 10-point favorite with a 48.5 game total. Personally, I'm not targeting anybody from Virginia Tech. I do understand the appeal of Drones at $8,200 because of his rushing upside. I just don't believe Virginia Tech's going to be able to do much against Louisville's defense, specifically with Louisville being home. Don't have a very high implied total. So, yeah, I'm going to be focusing predominantly on the Louisville side, avoiding Jack Plummer because this is not really a passing offense. This is Jawar Jordan's offense. So Jawar Jordan's one of my favorite plays, $9,800. Rashid Ali just tore this Virginia Tech defense to shreds a few weeks ago. Jawar Jordan definitely has that ability. I got him projected for 22 with a ceiling of 30 and a value of 2.51. What does limit Jordan's ceiling a little bit is he's not really a playmaker in the passing game, so that can hold him down a little bit by comparison to some other guys in that price range. Like Jonathan Brooks can catch a few passes as well to give him a little bit more value. So I still like Jawar Jordan, but that does keep him down a little bit. Jamari Thrash is an alpha wide receiver in this offense. Again, they don't throw a ton, but Thrash definitely gets his. At $8,700, I don't think he's a bad play. Overall value of 1.83. Just not a guy I'm particularly targeting that much. Okay, Missouri at Georgia. Personally, I think this line is disrespectful to what Missouri can do. I've watched a few Missouri games this year, and I like them. I definitely think Georgia's probably going to win, but 15.5 is a little bit ridiculous. Score of 55.5 for the game total. Top target from here is going to be Ladd McConkey. $6,500 is ridiculous for a number one wide receiver in an offense that passes the ball decent. Brock Bowers is out, and McConkey stepped up in a big way last game, and Missouri's defense could definitely get torched through the air. So McConkey is one of my favorite non-quarterback options on the slate at $6,500. Projection of 13, ceiling at 24, value at 2.56. You got to get this guy in your lineups. I am going to have a ton of shares of him. Looking at the running game, Dijon Edwards at $9,000 is also a pretty solid play. His ceiling, I just don't think the ceiling is like elite. But I do think he could pop for 2 touchdowns and hit for maybe a ceiling of like 26. Like him at a value of 2.29. Dominic Lovett, a little bit of a revenge game, revenge narrative here. If you want to play that at $6,700, I don't have him as highly valued as Ladd McConkey, considering also McConkey's also $200 cheaper. But I don't mind throwing a couple of darts at Lovett just because of the revenge narrative. He did play at Missouri for a couple of years. On the Missouri side, Luther Burden is an alpha wide receiver, and big-time players make big-time plays in big games. His cost is a little bit, worrisome at $8,800, but he can definitely hit a decent value. I currently have him pegged at a 2 value right now, so don't hate the play. I'm personally staying away from Carson Beck. Again, not a guy who scrambles a lot, picks up a lot of yards on the ground. He can fall into the end zone, and if he does, that's really what he needs to unlock his ceiling. I'm going elsewhere because of the higher ceilings than some other guys. UCF at Cincinnati. Cincinnati 3.5 point underdogs at home. Over under of 59.5 in this game. Top play from this is one of my top plays in the slate. That's going to be John Rice Plumlee at $10,000. He looks fully healthy. Since his return 2 games ago, he scored 23.5 and 28.5. Both of those are solid point totals for a guy who is at $10,000. And Cincinnati's pass defense is 127th in the EPA against dropback. So Rice Plumlee's a scrambling guy. You know he's going to get you the rushing yards. And he looked healthy last week. He's picked up a couple of rushing touchdowns since he's gotten back. So you always love that. But I think they can throw the ball this week for sure. I currently have him in projection at 29, which is almost a 3x value just off of a projection. Ceiling of 35 because I haven't seen him quite hit that level yet. The rushing isn't where it was last year. But still, 35 is 3.5 times value. Great for a quarterback, especially at 10K. And a projected value of 3.10. I do actually not mind stacking Rice Plumlee. Typically, I avoid stacking him because he's so much of a rusher, but I've seen him throw the ball quite a bit the last couple games. And Javon Baker seems like his go-to guy. I know Hudson caught the 2 touchdowns last week, but Baker stays involved. The last 3 games, he's gone 8, 7, and 10 for targets, and he's caught 3 touchdowns. So I like him at a cost of $7,100, got a ceiling of 22 points, and a nice little value of 2.06. So right where we like it, our wide receivers to be, especially at that 7,100 mark. RJ Harvey, again, not a bad play at $8,400. I think he's got a solid projection of about 17. His ceiling's a little bit skeptical because Rice Plumlee can take those touchdowns near the goal line. So I don't love him at $8,400, but definitely somebody you can get away with in your lineups. As far as the Cincinnati side, a couple of bring-back options. I do like Xavier Henderson at $7,300. He's had 11 and 9 targets in the last 2 games, so they do try to get him the ball. High-scoring game here. Could see them throwing the ball quite a bit and him finding a way to make something happen. Getting the end zone once, maybe twice. If he gets in there twice, he's going to be a huge play on this slate. I like it. Now, on the running back side, Corey Kiner is the lead back. He gets a lot of touches. I do, however, like Miles Montgomery at $6,600. Last 3 games outside of the Iowa State game, which was just kind of a disaster all around for Cincinnati, he has gone 30 carries for 254 yards and 3 touchdowns. Kiner, again, like I said, lead back, but he's not as explosive as Montgomery and doesn't get the touchdowns that Montgomery is. And at $6,600, Montgomery could fall into the end zone once. We're already hitting 2x value. Probably, and hey, listen, that's great. Maybe pushing somewhere upwards of like 20 points. So I do like Miles Montgomery as a sleeper pick on this slate. Penn State at Maryland. Maryland's 8.5 point underdogs at home, 49.5 game total. Not really targeting anybody from Maryland. Definitely not going to be targeting Drew Aller at the $8,700. Really going to focus in on Nicholas Singleton at $7,700. He did hit Maryland for a 25-point game last year, so I like that upside in him. Just a little bit risky for me because he's got to deal with Katron Allen, and you never know what's going to happen with the Penn State offense. I also like Keandre Lambert-Smith, true alpha wide receiver in this offense, $7,900. Maryland's defense can get taken through the air, so do like him. One guy I want to throw out there, not somebody I'm recommending, but somebody to keep an eye on just because of his cost at $5,000 is Dante Cephas. Came over from Kent State, was an alpha wide receiver there, so he's definitely got the potential. And just something about it. He's been increasing his targets in recent games. Just somebody to keep an eye out for. We'll see what happens there. Moving on to Kansas at Iowa State. Iowa State 3-point favorites at home, 53.5 game total here. Being road underdogs after taking down Oklahoma is a little bit surprising to me for Kansas. I really like Kansas a lot, but Iowa State can definitely do their thing too. So this is a sneaky game because I love the costs of the quarterbacks and I love the matchups. So I'm going to be getting myself a little bit of a game stack here because the low cost on these guys and their stack partners, you can pay up for some of the elites on this slate, and I like it. So Jason Bean has the talent to break any slate, and at $8,500, I'm definitely taking at least one shot at him. Ceiling of about 30 points, projected value of a 2.78. Not up there, but definitely enough for me to do a game slate, especially with Rocco Becht taking on a Kansas defense that is atrocious against the pass. At $7,500, even without the rushing upside, I like him enough to take a shot at him and hope this game pops off, which I think it could. Very well could. Rocco Becht's targeting Higgins, his top wide receiver. I do like Noel, but he doesn't score as many touchdowns as Higgins. So at $7,700, I'm going to take the shot at Higgins. And then I also like Devin Neal. Don't know if I love him in a full game stack because I haven't seen any examples where Jason Bean and Devin Neal both go off. And Neal's cost at $8,900 is a little bit concerning to try to stack them together, but it can be done. So not something I'd write off completely. Next game, Kentucky and Mississippi State. Mississippi State is 4.5-point home underdogs with a 45.5 game total. I'm avoiding this game completely. The only guy that might interest me is Ray Davis, but he's at $10,200, and there's just way better options at that cost. So stay away is my opinion on this game. Now we got the big one. Washington at USC. USC 3-point home dogs. Just a stupid over-under of 77.5. And they probably are going to go over. It's obvious who to like here. Caleb Williams at $12,000. Michael Penix Jr. at $11,500. Rome Odunze at $10,000. Jalen Polk at $9,700. Again, all those guys, fantastic option. Got to keep an eye out for the injury news on Jalen McMillan. Personally, I don't think he's going to play. I don't know what's going on with him, but he's not okay. And even if he does come back, I think he's going to be limited. And even if he's not limited, I definitely feel great about Odunze. I still feel comfortable enough with Polk in this matchup. Now, the commentary is on Caleb Williams and Penix Jr. Personally, I'm avoiding Penix Jr. in individual stacks. I'm only going to keep him in game stacks because I think Penix Jr. needs about 450 yards and 5 passing touchdowns to be over 3x value. And I want my quarterbacks to get over 3x value because he doesn't offer anything for rushing upside. And is that on the table? Absolutely. But he's only going to do that if Caleb Williams is also popping off. So that's why I'm only limiting that to game stacks. I currently have a projected value of 2.84, which is actually below Jordan Travis. So I'm going to be avoiding that. Might be a risky call, but that's going to be the play that I'm going to make this week. Caleb Williams also, I'm not going to be heavily stacking him across my lineups just because something seems off with him. I don't know if it's a receiver thing or what's going on, but even in this outstanding game environment, I'm a little bit skeptical. I mean, I look what happened last week with the Cal game, which was an outstanding matchup for him, and he still only scored like 32 points, which is not what you're looking for when you're paying $12K for a guy. So I'll definitely get him in quite a few lineups, but I'm skeptical. I'm a little hesitant. Now, to the guy who's actually my favorite, my favorite play in this game is Odunze at $10,000. I think he's going to destroy USC secondary. 35 points or more is not off the table at all. He is my favorite wide receiver play on the slate and my second favorite non-quarterback play on the slate. I'll tell you my favorite is with the next game. But my second favorite play in this game is actually Dylan Johnson from Washington. I know Washington doesn't run the ball a ton, and I know they haven't run the ball great, but USC's rush defense is atrocious. And the trend I look at is when Washington played Oregon, Johnson got 20 carries because Washington wanted to run clock and keep Oregon's offense off the field. And I think that's almost assured to be the case against USC as well, especially on the road. So I think Johnson might get 20 to 25 touches in this game and USC's defense can get just torched on the ground. I mean, you saw what Jaden Ott did in the first half of last week's game. So Dylan Johnson has 30-point upside for me in this game, and I have him pegged at a value of 2.59. One of my favorite plays on slate. I'm going to have a lot of shares of him because I think he's going to be underowned. That's one of my calls of the week. As far as the wide receiving options for Caleb Williams and USC, I am so confused on who to trust. I thought Brendan Rice was dominant. It was leading himself to be an alpha, but he has fallen down over the last few weeks. Tosh Washington stepped up, be that big play threat. And then there's Zach Branch just sitting there, the 5-star wide receiver, $5,200. I don't understand why they won't use this kid. He's just explosive, a touchdown waiting to happen. I'm surprised they haven't used him more. Personally, my top option is probably Brendan Rice. Just looking at some of the previous results of Washington's defense, they seem to get torched by receivers who play the same position as Brendan Rice. That is kind of sketchy and whatnot, but, it's the best thing I can lean on right now. I do have a projected value of 1.71. Taj Washington at the $8,200. He is a big play threat, but he hasn't been finding the end zone. If he does find the end zone once or twice, he could be huge. Got a projected value of 1.66. And then Zach Branch, I'm going to take at least 1 or 2 shots at Zach Branch just because you cannot deny the talent level. And he actually did rack up 6 targets last week. Just wasn't able to connect on more than one of them. He returns kicks, returns punts, so also opportunities for touchdowns there. Got him a projected value of 1.66. Ceiling of 14, which would be nice at his cost of $5,200. Okay. Last game here, we've got LSU at Bama. Bama 3.5-point home favorites with a 61.5 game total. My top quarterback on this slate is Jaden Daniels. I think that's risky, but I'm okay with it. I think Jaden Daniels should be the leader for the Heisman right now, watching what he's done this season. And this is his Heisman moment coming up right now. One of the reasons I feel a little bit more comfortable is I looked at last season's results with Jaden Daniels when he was not dominating. He was more a runner than a passer, and he's become a lot better of a passer this year. And he took on an Alabama defense that I think was better last year, an overall team that was better last year, and he still put up 30 points on them. And he only threw for 182 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think that he has an opportunity to beat that this year. So if I'm thinking 30 as a floor, somewhere around there, I'm comfortable enough with his ceiling all the way up at 45 because this guy can rush for 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, throw for 350 and 4 touchdowns. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind that this guy can torch Alabama. And it's very possible that this game turns into Tennessee-Alabama from last year. So I would definitely be interested in get me some Jaden Daniels. Now, because of that, I'm very interested in Malik Neighbors. Again, big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games, and Neighbors is a huge name in college football. Personally, I think he's got a ceiling of 30 points, value of 2.38. I'm a little skeptical to play him outside of Jaden Daniels stacks because he's in that same price range as Odunze and Polk, who both have way better matchups, so I'm probably going to limit him to just stacks with Jaden Daniels, but don't mind him outside of stacks. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Brian Thomas. Neighbors is the alpha in that offense, but Thomas can also get his as well. Cost at $9,000 worries me. He's probably going to need 2 touchdowns for me to be very comfortable with that cost, but definitely can throw a dart at Thomas in 1 or 2 lineups. Not a bad idea. Jalen Milroe, another top option on this slate. He hasn't hit his rushing upside yet. He's flashed in the passing department as well, but this is the game for him to go nuclear. I got him pegged as a ceiling of 38, overall value of 2.83 because I'm worried about his floor a little bit. Also, another guy I want to mention might keep him from hitting his ceiling, but I really do like Jalen Milroe, and I will have quite a few lineups with him in it. You'll want to stack him with Jermaine Burton at $7,200. We've seen what Burton can do in that downfield passing game. He took off against, I think it was Texas A&M a couple weeks ago, so it was 7 catches for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's not off the table in this game for sure. I will be playing Jermaine Burton in non-stacks as well. I also don't think Isaiah Bond's a bad option either. It's $6,100. He's behind Burton for sure, but he can hit big, on a couple of long targets as well. I would take shots at him because of his cost in non-stacks as well. And then finally, we're going to talk about my favorite non-quarterback play, possibly even better than some of the quarterbacks on the slate. And that's Jason McClellan. I think McClellan goes nuclear this weekend. At $7,400, that is a joke of a cost. The worst priced player on this slate, in my opinion. Here's why. A couple weeks ago, Cody Schrader from Missouri took on this LSU defense. He had 13 carries for 114 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just insane. Tell me Jason McClellan can't do that. I think McClellan is a better talent than Cody Schrader. No disrespect to Cody Schrader, that's what I think. And Cody Schrader hit 27 carries last week against Tennessee in a game where Alabama was trailing and had to come back. So they obviously trust him to lead their offense. And this game, this is another leading back to the Washington offense versus USC's, USC. Bama is going to need to try to keep Jaden Daniels off the field. And the best way to do that is to lean on Jason McClellan. And this LSU defense can't stop him. So I am all over Jason McClellan. I'm going to have a stupid amount of Jason McClellan this week. And I think you should too. Okay, so to wrap it up, just going to tell you about my top quarterbacks on the slate. So I do it kind of like a primary, secondary, and tertiary thing. The primary quarterbacks, those are the guys I stack with everybody, including themselves. Secondary quarterbacks, I only stack with the primary quarterbacks. And then tertiary quarterbacks, I only stack with my favorite quarterback of the week. That's how I kind of build my 2 quarterback lineups. So my primary quarterback and top option, like I mentioned, is Jaden Daniels. And then my second primary quarterback is going to be John Reese Plumlee. My secondary quarterbacks are Caleb Williams, Dylan Gabriel, Jordan Travis, and Jalen Milroe. So I have quite a few of each of those guys. And then my tertiary is KJ Jefferson. Now I'm going to be stacking him in 3 lineups, not just with Jaden Daniels. I get him one with Jaden Daniels, and then I'll get one with Dylan Gabriel and one with Jalen Milroe. I wanted one more lineup of each of those guys just because I believe in their upside, and I think that if I could pair them with KJ Jefferson, there could be some serious money that pays off. A couple of game stacks I got, Jaden Daniels and Jalen Milroe. I got a few of those because I think that could be one of the most explosive games on the slate. One of those lineups, I'm going to have Jason McClellan in it to make it a full game stack, which will also allow me to actually pay up for some guys I quite like. So I actually like the lineup that one was built. I might share it on my Twitter later. Also have a couple of Penix Jr. and Caleb Williams, of course. Can't avoid that game. And I like how I was able to build those ones specifically, too, because I was able to get Odunze and Polk, one in each of those lineups. So the builds on those look pretty good as well. And then I did get one Rocco Becht and Jason Bean, like I mentioned. I think that's a game that could be a sneaky shootout, led by the quarterbacks specifically. And then if they do shoot out, I was able to pay up for both Ollie Gordon and Romeo Dunze in that lineup. So that one could be very exciting. I think Jason McClellan's in that lineup too. So that one might be one of my favorite shots to take on the entire slate. So that's all I got for you guys. This took a lot longer than I thought it was. I thought it was going to be like 10 to 15 minutes, but I kept talking. So I hope you all enjoyed. And if you liked it, let me know. Maybe I'll do it every week for the rest of the season. So before I get out of here, I'm going to put some stuff on the screen right now just to show you how I'm valuing my running back and wide receiver positions based off of value and independent of any stacking opportunities. So on that note, I will see y'all later, and I'm gone. Deuces.